the mushroom is your friend, and it's not a toy. Some people think it is like recreational, and it's like, sure, I have no issues, going out there and experimenting. But then you hear the stories of like, oh, I did mushrooms and things didn't go the way I expected them to go. We always ask, where were you? What was your intention and what was going on in your life at the time? There are so many factors that determine the direction that the mushroom is going to guide you. And sometimes it shows up. I say it's like a mirroring. You're mirroring yourself. You're seeing your self-reflection and looking at, why was I thinking and being and doing that way all this time? And it's like, it doesn't serve me. So it gives you like a fresh start in a way of taking a moment to pause. It teaches you how to pause, come into heart, and then move forward from there, other than always through the thinking. I always thinking, stinking mind, but the negative thought patterns that's within us. So the mushroom it can be a one-time ceremony, guided ceremony. And with the Journeymen Collective, we hardly have many repeat clients, but we're starting to see a few after 3 years, knowing that they're ready to sort of up-level their human, we will say it. And but it's not for recreation. I don't think. That's my personal opinion, but I think it's an amazing teacher. And the psilocybin that we use is called Golden Teacher, and it's very golden, and it's a great teacher.
Yes. I always think it's remarkable how, when we go through these periods of shadow, dark nights of the soul, how they really help us to tap into those creative parts of us. And those personality constructs within us, really creative or that want to serve the world, really have a chance to surface at those points. And the modalities that we use really matter. I remember using ayahuasca in 2019, and I really believe, the ayahuasca plant remains with me. And it actually guided me through the 2020, all that pandemic issues that the entire world went through. And I still feel that the presence of the plant, that energy. And this takes me to want to hear more about what the plant, the fungi you use, the psilocybin, what is it? And what, those that I've never heard, because there's so many different types of plants. What is special about psilocybins and what do people need to know about? Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes show. I am your host, Bola Abimbola, life coach, frequency alchemist, and energy practitioner. And Daily Soul Bytes show is where we have guest authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs share their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today I have two very special guests all the way from Canada, and they have a retreat. They have a retreat called the Journeymen Collective, all the way in the mountains of Canada. Rob Grover and Gary Logan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I would like to read your bio before we start. I'm looking forward to this conversation. This is actually round two. For those who may not know, we actually had a previous recording last week, and there was a technical hiccup. So I am really appreciative for Gary and Rob to come back and do this. Rob Grover and Gary Logan are the founders of the Journeymen Collective, the alternative wellness company creating guided magic mushrooms, psilocybins. And this, they have this mushroom retreats in the mountains of Vancouver. They have hosted entrepreneurs, CEOs, athletes, performers, couples, and small groups, invested in the highest level of personal development and self-discovery. I love that. And today we're really going to delve into this issue of psychedelics, because psychedelics is something that a lot of people in society, many people are conditioned to see psychedelics as something that is not beneficial or something that we shouldn't engage in. But I really believe in the power of plant medicine in general, in actually transforming our internal landscape in order for us to experience more of that spirit self that we truly are. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Gary and Rob today about their experiences and really how we can use plant medicine or psilocybins in a safe way in order for us to experience our best outcomes. So thank you, Gary and Rob. So tell us what is it that made you really become passionate about psilocybins? I would really love to hear that summary.
Where do you start? What lifetime?
Exactly. So I had experimented with psychedelics like 20 plus years ago in university, and it was always a trip, and I had fun. Sometimes it wasn't fun, but most of the time it was just having fun with friends, maybe combining it with a little bit of beer. And I didn't really quite know the potency and the power of the actual medicine, the plant medicine, or in this case, fungi medicine. And basically, both Gary and I, we've been on a spiritual personal development path for many, many decades. And Gary for about 4 decades, myself for about 2+ decades. And Gary's mom, who lived with us for 2.5 years, decided to exit stage left, and she transitioned, she passed away. And during that grieving process, probably about a month after, there was this, we call her this little fairy woman who came into our life, and she said, I just worked with a medicine man, and I think you and Gary could both benefit from it. At first, I sort of scoffed at the idea because both Gary and I thought, oh no, we have enough tools in our toolkit. We've been doing this mind-body conscious awareness training for many, many decades, and we've got this. And then the topic kept coming up, and then the same looping behaviors of grief and depression were still there, and more so for Gary than myself, because it was his mom. But we still woke up every day, and it was like sort of a rude awakening every day, walking down the hall and seeing her room empty. And it was a rude awakening in that it's like, it made us question, what are we doing here? Why are we doing what we're doing? We both had our own individual personal development companies. And then I went on a journey, and that's when it all shifted and changed. And I came into my true purpose of what I'm here to do and who I'm here to be for other people. The grief, the depression lifted, and I devoted myself to studying with the medicine man, working with the medicine man. Both Gary and I ended up working with the medicine man to really know what we were doing in that space, and then combining all of the other ingredients, all the magic of Rob, all the magic of Gary into what we're doing now. And we were basically guided to start our company. And I'll pause there and see if Gary wants to add anything in there.
Yeah, Robert was the first one to go. It was basically, you go, I don't do mushrooms, I don't need it. I can get this on my own. But when he came home, it's like, wow, you shifted out of the grief and depression. Energetically, he was lighter, happier, more joy, more connected, more grounded. All very similar words that you probably hear out in the spiritual world. But I was like, wow, mushrooms can do this. So I spoke to the medicine man and booked in my date with the mushrooms, and it was on my birthday. And I always say it was the best birthday gift one could give oneself. The timing was perfect. It was 2 days before was the celebration of life for my mother, spreading of ashes, and then it was my birthday. And wow, yeah, it shifted a lot of depression and grief. And I came back in alignment. I would say I was probably walking a little bit sideways sometimes, not really standing straight up. That's the way it felt. But when I finished the weekend with the shaman, it was like, wow, I am so clear and open and receptive, and I feel great. In the journey, of course, there was many visuals and a lot of important information comes through at those times. But I told Robert, I think, in my visions, this is what we're supposed to do. It's not like we just did mushrooms and woke up and said, oh yeah, let's go do mushrooms and serve it to the world. It's no, this is our path and our passion and our destiny.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I always think it's remarkable how, when we go through this periods of shadow, dark nights of the soul, how they really help us to tap into those creative parts of us and those personality constructs within us, really creative or that want to serve the world, really have a chance to surface at those points. And the modalities that we use really matter. I remember using ayahuasca in 2019, and I really believe, the ayahuasca plant remains with me. And it actually guided me through the 2020, all that pandemic issues that the entire world went through. And I still feel that the presence of the plant, that energy. And this takes me to want to hear more about what the plant, the fungi you use, the psilocybin, what is it? And what, those that I've never heard, because there's so many different types of plants. What is special about psilocybins and what do people need to know about?
Mm-hmm. So for your listeners, what I'd like to do is create an image in their mind of it's a teacher. So if you have a favorite teacher that you had in high school or university or even elementary school, it's like having that favorite teacher with you, and it's going to help you get rid of what no longer serves, any conditioning that is taking place on the mental, emotional, or spiritual or physical levels. And it's going to help you open up to that next level of awareness. And if you look at what it does in the forest, any mushroom that's in the forest will decompose that which is no longer necessary. So fall happens, the leaves fall to the ground, fungi start acting on the leaves to decompose those leaves, and then it sends the nutrients out into the ecosystem to where it's needed most. And so energy it never rests. Everything's always moving. And so humans have this tendency or this habitual way to get stuck. And the mushrooms can help show us front and center what's at the core of our stuckness, of what's happening to us in this very now, what thinking, feeling, being, doing is getting in the way. And it helps us to acknowledge it, look at it, be with it, and then let it go. And so it's a letting go process. And the psilocybin itself, it helps you to see on the inside. So if your listeners, if you close your eyes, you're probably to see nothing but black. And what the psilocybin does in a journey is you close your eyes and it's like a television series comes on in your mind and you start seeing different images, different patterns. And then once those patterns sort of start to show you information, then you get to a part in the actual ceremony where you go into a journey. And that's where you get to learn about yourself, about the constructs of reality that you have in place, constructs of the cosmos and the universe that are available to you. And it helps you to really start to commune with that teacher and to learn from it and to be present to yourself and learn even after the ceremony, asking yourself the questions of, well, does this serve me? Can I change this? Can I change this conditioning? So I think it has a lot to do with helping humans optimize their sacred ecosystem within self.
I love that. Thank you, Rob. Do you want to add to that, Gary?
The mushroom is your friend, and it's not a toy. Some people think it is like recreational, and it's like, sure, I have no issues, going out there and experimenting. But then you hear the stories of like, oh, I did mushrooms and things didn't go the way I expected them to go. We always ask, where were you? What was your intention and what was going on in your life at the time? There are so many factors that determine the direction that the mushroom is going to guide you. And sometimes it shows up. I say it's like a mirroring. You're mirroring yourself. You're seeing your self-reflection and looking at, why was I thinking and being and doing that way all this time? And it's like, it doesn't serve me. So it gives you like a fresh start in a way of taking a moment to pause. It teaches you how to pause, come into heart, and then move forward from there, other than always through the thinking. I always thinking, stinking mind, but the negative thought patterns that's within us. So the mushroom it can be a one-time ceremony, guided ceremony. And with the Journeymen Collective, we hardly have many repeat clients, but we're starting to see a few after 3 years, knowing that they're ready to sort of up level their human, we will say it. And but it's not for recreation. I don't think. That's my personal opinion, but I think it's an amazing teacher. And the psilocybin that we use is called Golden Teacher, and it's very golden, and it's a great teacher.
I love that. The golden teacher. That's beautiful. And I do agree with you, Gary. We all have choice. And, I'm not one to say, something is right or wrong, because each person has their own theme to explore. And, that has to be something that they do. But it's about offering these resources and our own experiences so that those who may resonate with what we're saying may align. And, that collective consciousness is sweeter when we're all in resonance. I think that's or when we are observing and experiencing things in resonance. So that's quite nice. But I know that every single person will probably have heard or know somebody who has had a bad experience with psychedelics. So I would love to know from your experience, what are some of the misconceptions of psychedelics, and how can people address that? Because I know your retreats are guided retreats. So that is a safe, from my understanding, that those are safe uses of psychedelics. But there is still this misconception that it's really important for us to address it. What would you consider to be the most common misconceptions of using psychedelics?
People will lose their mind. It's the first thing that we hear all the time, because that's how they were programmed in the 50s, 60s, 70s. You will lose your mind if you do psychedelics and drugs. But the mushroom isn't a drug. It's created in the forest. God created it. So the thing is, losing your mind, most likely when you come on a guided journey with the Journeymen Collective, you'll find your mind. And you'll find another door that you've never walked through before, that it's been blocked by programming of society or family or upbringing, school. There's so many factors that get in our way to be who we are, to be who we are truly to be, is what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the other thing that people often think is, am I going to lose control? And the two things with both of those myths are, well, the first one is you're supposed to lose your mind every once in a while. And what I mean by that, I know people would think, well, do you mean that I'm going to go crazy? No, what I mean by losing your mind is a collection of thoughts, feelings, and actions. And at some point in time, you have to reevaluate your thoughts, feelings, and actions. And you're supposed to lose some of those before you make it to the grave, so that you can optimize your life for what you truly came here to do and be. And with the whole, am I going to lose control? Within our experience, you're guided through the experience. And for the most part, you're laying in a beautiful, comfortable, luxurious environment where we create a very safe experience for you, so that you can really rest into yourself. And then the losing control is actually just a misnomer, in that you've never been taught how to let go. So the losing control is you learning how to let go of your mind, of your whole entire being, so that you can learn something greater and learn a greater aspect of your mind that has been waiting for you. And one of our clients sent us a podcast here a week ago, and one of the clips that he sent was that you have an appointment with your soul. Are you going to show up to that appointment? So I believe that the misnomers or the myths are blocking people from actually entering into a mystical, sacred experience, because the sacred and the mystical has been ripped out of our society to such a great extent that most of us think that, well, if I go do this, am I going to have to go live on a mountaintop for the rest of my life and isolate myself from society? No. When you're working with professionals who know how to work with this medicine, you're going to be fully integrated and embodied in a different way, so that you're actually you're making a greater contribution to your individual self, to the people in your life, the relationships you have, and then the career that you're involved with as well. You'll change how you operate. And so I think that's like another myth, that people are like, oh, well, am I going to change? And the myth is, you're supposed to change. We're supposed to evolve. That's what life is all about. You're supposed to grow. So if you're not aware of how to let go of some things, then you're going to stay in that loop. And it's not about getting loopy, it's getting out of those loops.
Thank you so much, Rob. I really agree with you, because there's this grip. When you mentioned the grip of the mind, this physical ego mind that we have is definitely fear-based, and it's really focusing on the threats. You know, there are about 60,000 to 90,000 thoughts going through our minds every single day. This is the physical ego mind. And these thoughts, 80% of them are repetitive, and 80% of them are negative. But the patterns, the loop. So being able to pause the mind, being able to really begin to get a taste of what the higher mind thoughts feel like, what the higher mind state of neutrality, that essence of being. I think, plant medicine, psychedelics really are a powerful modality to help us get a taste of that detachment, because we have to detach from that grip. So I do agree with you. In my book, I published a book. It was actually published by Barbara Press, a division of A House. Daily Soul Bytes is called. It's now available anywhere books are sold. Daily Soul Bytes talks about the physical ego mind and how there are perspectives of this physical ego mind, which are usually around victimhood. And there's also the higher perspectives of the higher mind, which are usually around love, around power, around reminding ourselves that we have choice. We have choice, and we can begin to align more to those higher perspectives if we choose. So I do totally agree with this modalities that help with that detachment, with that recognition, that awareness of the different thoughts, and allowing ourselves, giving ourselves permission, because it's one thing to know we have low frequency thoughts and high frequency thoughts, and it's another thing to be able to pause the mind and attach to what will serve us better. So I do love, your modality, and I'd love to know more about it. So when clients come to you and they contact you and they want to be part of the Journeymen, and I understand that, yes, you are called Journeymen, but you see all genders. I know from the last time we spoke. But what can clients expect from you? So, is it a 2-month, 4-month? And what are the kind of outcomes that you see your clients experience when they have gone through your programs?
We work with all humans. And because we get that question quite often, is like, no, we work with everyone. Well, honestly, we don't work with everyone, but we work with those that get accepted into the program. So there's an application process that would be 2 to 3 calls to get to know the client, to see if there's a mutual fit for if we're able to work with you, and if this is what's calling for you to work with us. Once accepted, we have a 4-month container. The first month would be online, like Zoom, like we're doing right now, and just to prepare you for the journey process. And that would be about an hour call. Then you would come in person to our center, the Journeymen Collective Center in British Columbia, and you would spend 4 full days with us. 2 of those days would be in ceremony with psilocybin, and 2 full days of integration. And after that, as we say, a lot of our clients reluctantly leave to go out to the real world, and they want to stay and live with Rob and Gary, but they're also excited to go out into the new world because they've let go of the baggage that is no longer serving them, and they're willing and ready to and able to move forward in their life in a new direction, in a new thought pattern. So with that in mind, we are with you for another 3 months of integration work, and that would be like once a week on Zoom, and then we take it down to once every 2 weeks, still on Zoom. But we stay in contact with our clients since we started, like 6.5 years ago. We still touch base or touch in and see how they're doing, or they reach out to us. So once you've come through the Journeymen Collective, we always say you're raising up soul community, and that community is ever growing and expanding.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of the outcomes, they're widely varied, but I know that there's a theme that takes place, and one of them is a greater clarity and a greater connection to self. Like we had one client, he came through and after his second ceremony, he literally said it was Neil, meet Neil. So Neil was introduced to Neil inside of the ceremony and met his true self. And with that true self, there's a visceral experience that we teach people how to remember back into. So your listeners can probably identify with any trauma or drama that has ensued within their life. They can talk about it and share that story again and again, and they can re-entrain into that thinking, feeling, being, and doing way of living. And so we teach people how to touch into the pointed moments, the touchstone moments in their journey, so they can continue to learn from it, continue to garner learning from that experience for the rest of their life. So it's like a zip file that is being continually unzipped and synthesized into their awareness. And with that, people, when they work with us, they'll say things like, I've never been so content in my whole entire life. I've never been so peaceful. I don't know what this is, but I think this is possibly what they call peace. I think this might be what people call freedom. I think this might be what people call love. And there's a liberation from years of depression, years of trauma, years of conditioning that has been passed down through generations upon generations upon generations, where no one has given someone space to actually be cared for at a really, really high level. And that's one thing that people often say is that, like, I had a really great life, I had really great parents, and I had a really loving home. However, I don't think I've ever experienced the degree of love that the Journeymen Collective put forward for people. And it's a high level of care that people feel safe in. And so because we have introduced that to them, they now know that they can go back home and they can practice through meditation, whatever that meditation looks like for them. It could be sitting on a mat, it could be running, it could be swimming, it could be being on horseback, it could be art of some sort. But it's giving people the unique tools that really want to be used in co-creation for that individual, through that individual, so that they're actually creating that visionary reality that they want to create. So some of the things that happen are people will meet the love of their life. People will have a project that they've had on the back burner for years or sometimes decades, and they'll bring it out to the forefront and let that come into fruition. Release of anxiety, release of depression, many different facets and symptoms connected to small and big T traumas. And people know how to live a happier, more harmonious life. And I think people feel more connected to themselves. And as a function of that, they can connect more deeply with those in their lives.
I totally agree. It's really powerful because that, that change from being driven by that physical ego self to really experiencing the drive of the higher self is love. It's a transmutation. And, transmutation is different from transformation because transmutation, you change states and you never go back. You're never the same. And yes, we're changing all the time. We're jumping timelines all the time. But there is a very large quantum leap we make when we are experiencing psychedelics in a safe way that allows us to go through the journey of transmutation from that physical ego self being driven by the physical ego self-driving self to where there is a surrender to that higher self. So I totally agree with that transmutation that takes place. And I do want to ask you about the journey. When you say the journey, your clients will start with you for the 4 months, and there's integration when they come face to face on your retreat grounds. If you could just take us through what is a typical journey, because integration means a number of different things. So there is the euphoria, I can imagine, where there is a lot more detachment in the physical ego self, and it feels a little bit euphoric and very, it's a bit uncontrollable. And then there is that other stage that I know would be good for you to elaborate for us. That involves, you've already mentioned, it involves some visuals, it involves some degree of self-realization. But what are the kinds of things that really happen in these, in that journey?
So that's a wonderful question, and it's always unique to the individual. So I'm going to go fairly general on this. And one of the things that tends to happen in a guided psychedelic journey is that the first little bit where the medicine's starting to take hold is that people will experience the quintessential psychedelics, different fractals, different sacred geometries, different visuals. And what most people don't realize is that when you go on a trip, typically most people stay in that part of the actual journey. But then once you get through that elevator ride, get through the psychedelic portion, that's when you get to the journey. And when you get to the journey, you are presented with different visuals, different images, different beings sometimes that are connected to you. Different, your ancestors may show up as well. Different loved ones may show up and provide a teaching for you. And when we're with you, we're working with you, we're in the journey with you, mind to mind, heart to heart, soul to soul, and we're guiding you through that experience so that you're essentially watching your own television series. And there's going to be different chapters that we're there to help you through, because when you don't have the guide with you, sometimes you can get stuck in one loop for 5 to 6 hours. And that's when people say, oh my goodness, it was such a bad trip. So we're there to help keep the energy moving. And there's many different modalities and tools that we've been granted that we use, a lot of the different sacred geometry tools that we use to help you move through the different stories. And it's like you're watching a television show and you're taking a screen capture in your mind, and with that screen capture, it's about you learning from that experience, or even if you don't know what that experience is all about, you can still take that screen capture and recall it and remember it and ask, what am I to learn from this experience? And then from that learning, there's going to be understanding. And from that understanding, there's going to be application. So it's like a slipstream of consciousness that you're taking that transcendental experience and you're weaving it into your life, in that it's not just in the mind. You're actually taking that transcendental experience, that visual of different chapters, and you're learning how to translate it into some sort of action, or it might be a non-action, because it's that chapter is showing you that, hey, this is something that you might want to stop doing. So then there's non-action that's taking place, change in your habit. So there's so many different things that people see and experience. It's, I think, even for ourselves, I could probably take up about 8 hours of time just sharing stories of my own journeys. There's a lot of visuals, there's a lot of feeling involved. There's a lot of release of old emotions, a lot of tears. Sometimes there's laughter. And for the listener as well, it's like, if you could just picture yourself lying in a beautiful, comfortable environment and letting yourself be tended to and taken care of at a very high level, then you get to rest into yourself. And then there's individuals around you that are curating the energy so that you can be on that magic carpet ride and you can soften yourself, soften the physicality, and really allow the medicine and the medicine of Rob and Gary and the Journeymen Collective to really help you know thyself. And thyself is not only like the human self, but also knowing that we're part of something greater. We're part of something that, like, if you think about it for a moment, there are 8 billion ants known as humans running around this little speck of dust known as the Earth, inside of the solar system, inside of this galaxy, inside of galaxies within galaxies. And when you really zoom out, we're pretty tiny, we're pretty small. However, there's something very unique about the experience of being human, that we've all been sent here for a specific purpose, for a specific reason. And when you can tap into that, sorry, there's just like 2 deer just flew by the 3 deer just flew by the window running. So when you can tap into that greater purpose, that highest purpose of what you've come here for, that's when you start living that life of freedom, of happiness, of peace, of contentment, of joy, of love. And it becomes a co-creative process that you step into, that you are truly empowered and you're living in the pocket of your soul.
And this takes a lot of trust. It takes for us to let go of that conditioning and to really begin to allow the things we cannot see to guide us, because we're really conditioned to focus on the things that we can see. So I do want to ask about that, because there'll be those who will be watching this and who will be saying, if I connect to my spirit self, if I connect to, the unseen of the universe, I may connect to some dark beings. How do I protect myself? Because it's one thing for them to be at the Journeymen Collective and be supported in that way, but we know that these plant teachers do stay with us for life. So it's not a relationship that ends when they leave your retreat. So, there may be some who would feel, oh my goodness, I'm going to connect to this plant, and then when I leave here, how am I going to manage myself when I'm not in the, under the umbrella of Gary and Rob? So what do you say to those who have those misconceptions and find it difficult to trust and let go, in order for them to embody and to live a life where they're guided by intuition?
Yeah, trust is a big factor. That was a big T. I think the most important thing is, it is the follow-up and the follow-through I have the image of you as a client coming through the program and out in the world on your own, but you're never on your own, really. The collective is always with you. You're in a pinball machine and you're the little silver ball in the machine, that the little black hole is your old way of being and doing. And Gary and Rob are the bumpers to bump you along. So energetically, we're with you, and to guide you. And there's moments we get phone calls or text messages saying life is doing great, or I'm in a bit of a waffle right now. So in the waffle world, we would assist you to pull you out of the waffle, or you would have enough tools then to reflect back and going, that is an old way of thinking and doing, and that I know a new way of moving forward is just not re-education, but it's redirection of the energy of what you want to bring forward in life, not what you want to bring with you from the past. We're not saying you're going to forget everything from the past or the trauma or the darkness, whatever you want to call it. It's just the energy connection to that story has thinned out to a nice thin line. And sure, you can tap in whenever you want to, but it isn't the forefront of you living in the moment. So fear is fear itself. It's only a word. And the darkness is only a word also. The darkness is maybe those negative thoughts. And then you just look at it, do those negative thoughts serve me as I move forward in my life? And if they don't, jump off the merry-go-round and start walking the thought pattern that you want to move forward with. And sure, there's going to be hiccups in life. That's what life is all about. There's going to be little bumps in the road, but you will have that confidence to move forward through those bumps, even if Rob and Gary and the Journeymen Collective are not there in that moment with you. But you have enough information to move forward clearly and not blindly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Things that I'd like to mention inside of that as well, in that darkness. What is darkness? Darkness is the unknown, and humanity has been told, like, do not step out of the cave of the norm, because if you do, you're going to be eaten by a lion or a tiger or a bear. And we're no longer living in caves, but most humans are looking for someone outside of them to give themselves permission to step into that bigger version of themselves and to step into that unknown aspect of self. And Gary and Rob, we have done stepping into the unknown self many, 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 many times. We jokingly say that we've come out of a lot of closets. And when you learn how to step into the unknown, to step into the darkness, then you get to bring your light into that darkness and illuminate what's there for you. And one of our teachers that we've had along the way, he would always say, you need to know where you're at and where you're going. So we really help people to design a life that is connected to where they want to go, and that different pieces of that can evolve and change and shift. But it's very, very important to have that aspect of where are you going. A lot of people don't ever have like a 1 or 2 or a 3-year plan of like, where are you going? What are you doing? What are you creating? And because of that, like, most people will say, well, I know what I don't want. And then what happens? More of that comes to life. So when you know what you want, what your soul wants to bring to and through you, and you're willing to take that leap, that trust fall into the unknown, you learn how to start to transmute the shadow of self, the unconscious, the subconscious patterns within self. And when you truly start to recognize at the core root of all of it, it's just fear. That's all it is. And sometimes our fear of fear is so great that we just stay under the comfort zone blanket of like the known, that we get to the end and it's like, oh, well, I really missed a lot of opportunities in life. And when you actually know what that visceral sense within self feels like, that becomes your compass. When you start to embody your higher self and your highest or cosmic self starts to flow through you witness when you're like slightly out of alignment, or when the fire hose of consciousness has been ripped out of your hands or out of your heart, and it starts flailing around and smacking you in the face with, gee, this pattern looks familiar. Why am I seeing this again and again and again? So it's about self accountability as well, of like starting to examine self and starting to witness the patterns of, why does this keep happening? And then when that answer comes through, it's like, great, now you know, now it's time to change and shift into a different octave, a different harmonic, so that, again, you can get on with the life that you come here to live. So I think so many people get stuck in the mundane of fear, and they're gripped by their own ego of like, well, who am I going to be if I actually like go and do something different than I've been taught to do? And most of the people that are probably going to listen to this are listening that are probably going to think, well, I didn't come here to grow up, go to school, get a career in that specific training, and then live that for the rest of my life, wait for retirement to do what I really want to do. And then people retire, and then what happens? They usually die within 3 or 4 years, and they haven't lived the life that they want. So it's like, for your listeners, it's like, you can start to live the life that you truly want to live if you're just willing to take one step a day, and then do that for an entire year, and you'll look back and your life will have changed a lot because you've taken 365 steps to that greater call within yourself.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thank you, Gary. It's really powerful when we realize the difference in the life experiences we have when we are driven by fear and when we are driven by love and power. So I love, and there is no right or wrong. It's all about the journey. It's all about the personal daily practice. And I do love what you said about having an understanding of the different selves that we have, because I always see self acceptance as watching a movie that has a lot of different characters. You've got the good guys, the bad guys, the good women, the really mean characters, and coming to love all those different characters, not judging. It's got to be from a place of non-judgment. And so I think, watching a movie and loving every part, because every character has a role to play, and all those personality constructs that we have create a reflection on the outside. So when we're thinking, oh, I'm too much in the shadow, that is us. The shadow is us. The light is us. And I love what you said about really coming to understand those different parts, and acceptance, love, and then surrender, with choice to that loving self to kind of drive. And, those who hear me speak, I'm not just talking arbitrarily. I'm actually connecting to different energy points, and actually, expanding the level of understanding in those who are listening. So we can allow different energy points to, parts of us, parts of our soul, parts of our tribe, our oversoul, to connect with us and guide us in whatever way intuition works for us. Because some of us see, some of us hear, some of us talk light language. So there's different ways that, that self begins to operate in the day to day. We don't get removed as if we're living in a mountain, somewhere. Like you guys are living in Vancouver in some retreat. But most of us live in the real world. And it can be quite a challenge when we're thinking, oh, can I still manage to deal with the chaos? If I allow myself to be in that, in this particular fourth density, I call it reality. This is heaven on earth. And yes, we continue to live on earth, but the experience is less strenuous. It's not that there are no ups and downs. There are still ups and downs, but we manage them more because we now have our soul, our spirit, giving us the resilience that we need to guide us through those dark times. So yes, I totally value your work, and I'd want to really ask my listeners and our audience to connect with you. to kind of discover this new way of being. Because I also channel the Aldorians. They're beings from the planet Aldor who really have come to help us to really have a new way of being. And this is something that I teach in my programs as well, online and here in London. So it's very possible. A different way of being is very possible. And it's about how do we come to ally to that, regardless of the resistance or the conditioning that we have. And how can people connect with you, Gary and Rob, when they want to reach out?
We have a great website, www.thejourneymen.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Beautiful. Do you have any final words today before we go?
Yeah, I always say, if you want to take one lesson from this, is to get out of the mind is think with the heart and love with the mind.
Yes, thanks, Gary. And Rob?
I would say for your listeners, ask yourself the question, what have I truly come here for? What have I truly come into this human experience for? And if you're seeing things that you don't like, then you have the full power, the full resilience, and the full freedom within yourself to embark on a different journey of life.
Thank you for that. Such wise words. Thank you so much for joining me today, Gary and Rob.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'd love to thank our listeners and audience for joining us again today. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Daily Soul Bytes show. Bye-bye.